I would like to show you this book. In reality, is a series of free books. I got only two because I don't know what is the original price, but I paid like $5 for this book. So, hey, $5 it's a great thing. Why? Because this Sam Palatnik is a grandmaster and is really good. In this book, it's the idea is all about improvement, but not your personal improvement. It's improvement over the chessboard of your position, because the first world champion in Steinitz was the one that introduced this idea. He said, well, if you want to win a game, you need to improve your position, and there are some positional elements. And this book is about that, to teach you how to improve your position in every game. There are a lot of examples by Palatnik games, and so I'm kind of very interested in watching them because everyone think that these minor GMs that maybe didn't win the world title are not important, but I do think they are great teachers, and so we can learn from them. So the chapter 1 is improvement versus freestyle. The Palatnik is white and Booth is black. I don't know who is Booth. This game, however, was played at the Atlanta Open 1996. That's great, right? Atlanta Open. I didn't play in that. I wasn't not even in US in that time. So okay. D4, knight f6. C4, G6, knight C3, bishop G7, E4, D6. So this is the typical opening moves of a King's Indian defense, okay? At this point, white played knight G, E2. And here he says, it is rather seldom that you can solve all the problems with a single, even a very strong move. You always have a plethora of choices at your disposal. A chess game is often a perpetual problem of choice. Even a checkmating one is still one of a choice moves to be made. You can always choose a more creative checkmating too. However, let us talk about choices that are more realistic. For example, in King's Indian defense and in many other openings, a single side cannot comprehensively resolve all of their issues immediately. You have to prioritize how to improve your position and make a choice of what is more important to you. White can focus primarily on seizing control in the center, while black can first address the problem of development of a king side. Now white has a challenge of establishing an advantage in the center and simultaneously catching up to his opponent in development. Black in turn has to answer the question if the price they paid to have a bishop on G7 and short castling is too high to pay. White's last move is an attempt to prepare their position to possible counterattacks in the center. They seem to give preference to the development of a knight against the theoretical development of a bishop to e3. So instead of this, he says this. And here he shows another variation. And the variation maybe it makes more sense because you see he starts with f3, and but here he just gave a variation saying at the end black is okay, but he doesn't explain you the moves. So why f3? Because if he would play this, you would play this right away, and he needs to move this once more. because it doesn't want to lose the bishop pair. Why it doesn't want to lose the bishop pair? Again, you need to give an explanation. Here is not given, so probably this book is aimed at players that already know this. And if you don't know, you will have to learn about it. The bishop pair, especially in open position, this is not an open position at the moment, it's very strong because it controls practically all the possible squares, and it becomes a nightmare, especially in the hands of a computer, because I have noticed that the difference between old computer engines and new computer engines, and for new I don't really mean new, I'm still speaking of something around 2000, was that the new computer engine, they always didn't want to lose the bishop pair. So to avoid to lose the bishop pair, he plays a move f3 that controls g4, so he can develop the bishop to e3. Castle, bishop e3. Now, again, also black needs to challenge the center in order to gain space. But again, this is not explained in this line that he gives. e5, d takes e5, d takes e5, queen takes d8, rook takes d8, knight d5. This is very interesting because he's giving, this is an outpost, right? But to do it right away, knight d5, you know that you're going to lose it because it can also be challenged by c6. So I don't know, this is kind of an interesting move. Why did he do that? Knight takes d5, c takes d5. This seems that he has created a pass pawn, but I'm not sure it's so true, because as you can see there is immediately a challenge to the center. And after c6 there is bishop c4, b5, bishop b3 and bishop b7. Here the evaluation of this grandmaster is black is okay, without explaining any of the moves that he gave us, okay? So now let me pause for a second the video and return back to the initial position from which we saw this game. Okay, this is the position from where we started. Here black played knight b d7, and the author of this book wrote that this is a dubious move. But the explanation for this dubious move is if black plans to undermine the center in the future with the c pawn, then this looks somewhat clumsy, and it gives a variation. Instead of knight b d7, he shows this, that is practically very similar to the one he just saw show above. Let me show you. Castle f3, e5, d takes e5, d takes e5, queen takes d8, queen, rook takes d8, knight d5, knight takes d5, c takes d5, c6, and here there is knight c3, saying that white has better prospects in the endgame. You can see the ideological difference between developing the bishop on e3 in favor of developing the knight on e2. Yeah, so the difference is that practically, and I think he stopped a move too early, because he should tell us what happens after this, right? Will white have an isolated queen pawn, or white will just use d5 as an outpost? I honestly don't know the King's Indian defense, I don't know the theory. I know that it's kind of very developed. Why? Because from Fischer time, this world champion that has really develop opening theory. The Russians had to fight Fischer on that particular opening that he played as black against d4, and so everybody went into it very, very deep. Again, it's a professional thing, because maybe for someone that is not a professional to play the King's Indian at tournament level, it's a little too much. Like to play the Sicilian, no? You need to find your own system, otherwise to know all the theory of the Sicilian. Maybe you can do it if you are a child on the road to Grandmaster. For an adult with many other commitments in life, it may be too difficult. But as you can see, every time he played f3, he played it with the idea that at a certain point he would have a bishop on e3. So that is what we can learn from that move, right? And then the different results in the center. So also if the author maybe doesn't explain any move, we can notice that there is a different result in the center part of the board, which is very important, because generally when you control the center, you are able to move your pieces better in other parts of the board. Okay, let's move on. So we were at move 5 with knight bd7. Now again white plays this thematic move f3, which, as we think, prevents black from playing knight g4, which means next move he could want to play this. He could, but maybe he doesn't do it right away, okay? It depends what happens in the center. Black challenges the enemy center immediately. Of course, other possibilities are castle, and like we have seen, e5 in previous variation that he gave. But in this game, black played c5. At this point, white has some choices. Here he doesn't tell us why he played d5, why he didn't play this, maybe. So again, there are some choices, and not only d5, why he didn't play this, right? Now, I'm not saying these choices, d takes e5 or bishop e3, are correct. I'm saying that if you want to give the learner that is watching your games an understanding, you should maybe share your thought process. Was this a result of analysis, d5, or this was part of the accepted theory in the King's Indian defense in 1996? Because one thing about the King's Indian is that after, I don't know, 2005, when computers were so strong that they could beat you, the human world champion, without problems, everybody started to use them for developing opening theory. So that's why we need to know also what is the source of this move. Okay? Black continue with castle, knight g3, a6. This a6 is a move that I find interesting. No? Why, you say? Because it blocks white from playing this. But when you play a6, then it becomes a problem, because this becomes a big hole. So I'm often scared to play a6 too easily, okay? However, the author played here, left a diagram. When they put a diagram and they are at Grandmaster level, it's because they want to show you something, no? Here he wants to show you that he played this move, a4. And he says, this like yet another loss of time to move the pawns in the opening. However, if white would have played bishop e2, then black would have played b5, and the position will be transformed into an altogether not bad interpretation of the Benko gambit for black. White's last move works better to improve their position. So here we understand the entire theme of the book. He said this move is to improve white position, but what is that white wants? Why white wants to play this? Because he wants to control a b5. And once more I tell you, in my opinion, is not only this, because once you play this, if black plays this, you can do this, okay? So in that case it's even more interesting. Notice one thing, once you play this, like I told you, maybe you play bishop d2, knight f4, knight b6, so, and this become the all that I told you was terrible once you play a6, okay? So this move, it's very interesting, and this is why when I told you here the author put a diagram, you should pause the video and try to think for yourself what would you play in this position and why, okay? So a4, it's clearly an interesting move. Now black played queen c7, and he says, now we see the after effect of the black fifth short-sighted move. What was the fifth move? Knight b d7, okay? In order to undermine the center through e6, they are forced now to spend the tempo to move the queen. So obviously he needs to move the queen, otherwise this is not protected, right? Because if you play it immediately e6, you just lose the pawn d6. That's the truth. So you have to play this move. Now white plays bishop e2. So as you can see, he wants to play bishop e2, but a4 was the move to prepare bishop e2. So often at grandmaster level they learn the meaning behind each move instead of just moving because they learn the theory by heart. Bishop e2, e6, castle, e takes d5, c takes d5, and now there is rook e8 that is marked as dubious. Once more, here there is a diagram, okay? So if there is a diagram, please pause yourself, pause the video, and try to guess what is white's next move. Now, white's next move is not flashy, is not a tactical blowing brilliance. No, this is the real chess, the real part of chess. In real chess you don't have all these tactics. Instead you have to find some good moves, like they said, and this is the theme of the book, to improve your position. In this case you are in the opening, you need to finish the development, because that's the goal of the opening. But let's read what the author says about this position. It could seem that a move by a rook to a semi-open file does not even need to be commented on. However, it would be useful to explain why white greeted this natural move with a rather warm reaction. The overall impression is that the last move by the rook does not work towards improving black's position. And this is interesting. How would you say that a move that makes sense, like this one, doesn't work to improve black's position? That's amazing, right? The rook would be hitting its head against the wall if it wants to get past the pawn on e4. Black's pride and joy is their fianchetto bishop on g7. However, it will only acquire any wharf if a knight on f6 will block it. I think he wants to say the contrary of this. This bishop will become worthy if this knight doesn't block it, right? So to improve your position, you should have found a better place for the knight, which maybe could be knight e8, but because in the King's Indian there is this kind of push that is liberating for black. So let's see what he is explaining. The rook on e8 in turn takes up the space where this knight could move away to. Yeah, so it will... Clearly the phrase wasn't read well, because he said, however, it will only acquire any worth if the knight on f6 will block it. No, will not block it. He forgot that. So sometimes you have to reread your books, or you need to have an editor that actually read the book and try to understand what the author is trying to say and give a comment, right? So that's what he wanted to say, that this move is not good because the knight cannot go on e8. Let's see. A whole tempo was just wasted. Instead of rook e8, it would have been better to play 12 h5. So this was a better move for him, freeing the knight, by the knight, the bishop and the f-pawn. Okay, so it doesn't mean that he wants to play this, knight h7. Okay, that makes sense, maybe. The rook in turn could have been more useful on f8 in preparation for f5. So yes, you want to do this and then play this when this is ready, not right now, okay? With the goal of expanding the space for black on the king side. Briefly, this would have been a better plan for improving black's position. Okay, unfortunately, sometimes here is the problem. How did black choose the plan? He should have understood that he needs to improve the position of the bishop g7. And how do you answer that? It seems not with this, but with this and maybe this. Again, a great debate, but do we have the tools for finding what is the right next move? And how did he find this? That's the point also. How did he find this? Did he use a computer? I don't know. Okay, so after rook e8, it's a white turn, and white played bishop e3. Without poking the bear, this move would have led black to the right path for improving the position, because again he probably wants to play that. So this is better, he thinks, for black, so for white, because it doesn't give black the chance to improve. Now we have another move, rook b8, and here there is again a diagram, which means you need to stop, pause the video and think. What would you play if you were white? Be careful, because this move, to find this move, I think it's kind of difficult. Once more, is not based on flashy tactics, and this is the real problem of chess, because in the opening, if your opponent is not a beginner, how do you find the right moves to improve your position, to finish the development? And often there are not very flashy tactics or stuff. So here you need to think, what is white's next move? Well, white played rook f2. Boom. How do you actually guess? I don't know. But he says, this is a mysterious move, it is multifunctional and useful. First, it weakens black's potential threats on the a7, g1 diagonal, in the case of a gutsy b5. The rook will become the defender of the pawn b2. White is already prepared for doubling up the rooks. So you want to double them up on the f file. You never know when it might become useful. This move is definitely done in the interest of improving one's position. And the problem is, once more, how do you reach that move? What is the thought process that made you think of it? That's what I don't know. That's what I don't know. Because, honestly, in this position, I would have thought something like this. Why? Because this, if you exchange, then you continue the attack and try to remove one of the defenders and try to give checkmate or here. I don't know. But this would have been my idea. Now, I'm not saying this move is correct at all, okay? But this seems more natural than this, right? So how do I reach, as a chess player, as an average club player, this kind of move? That's what I don't know. Okay, now there is knight e5 and another diagram. So that's the good thing, right? We have a lot of diagrams, which means the author wants us to think. What would you play as white? Once more, you have to think, right? And you say, but how do I find the next move is what I don't know. In any case, he played h3, also this a great move with an exclamation point. And he says, if you do not perpetually think of how to improve your position, your hand would not even rise to make such an abstract move. Black is now threatening to implement a liberating breakthrough on the queen side by going b5. So that's what Black wanted to do. Okay. So how do you know that, right? Because b5 seems kind of 1, 2 and 3, right? While here there are only 1 and 2. So you cannot really play b5 because you will lose the pawn. It so seems, right? But let's see what he says. In order to do that, all Black is left to do is to go to bishop d7. Okay, so that's what he means with the liberating move. He still has to prepare it with one more move, and so knight e5 is to give space to this bishop. Okay. However, this timid move by a pawn on the h file prevents that threat. Wow, how does it prevent it? That's what I don't know. Now it seems that he plays b6. And he says the undesirable bishop d7 would be followed by f4. Oh wow. And the knight would be trapped on e5. Here we can stop to draw some conclusions from the course of the game thus far. Black's last move is basically an acknowledgement that White has an advantage over his opponent's unplanned freestyle game. Okay, so that's why h3 was played, because you cannot play bishop d7, and so that's kind of a big problem, right? A big problem, because also b6 doesn't find a square for this knight. So again, now it all makes sense why he needed to do h5, h6 to do this, because he needed to find a space for f6, for the knight f6, and maybe the expansion on the queen side wasn't a good idea. But let's see now how the game continues. Rook c1. In turn, White does not deviate from the strategy of improving his position and continue to accumulate small advantages. The rook has completed its mission on the a file. This is the a file, right? And has now been transferred to the c file. This is the c file. Oh, there is a queen here, so it's threatening the queen. And it went further away as not to be skewer on the a1 h8 diagonal. So another reason for playing rook c1 is that when this diagonal will be open, and it will be open, at least you don't find your rook here at the mercy of this bishop g7. Queen d8. White's last move made Her Majesty the Queen a bit nervous. Generally, yes, when you have, and this is a lesson, when you have a rook that is on the file of your queen, you want to move your queen away, because magically things will happen, the position will open, and you will find your queen attack. Okay? b3. But this is, you see, it's an example of prophylaxis. Black tried to avoid a possible future problem. b3, bishop b7, and queen d2, finally queen d2. Without rushing, white continues to gradually improve his position. It is especially sweet when your opponent is completely pacified and must await his fate, buried deep in the trenches. Rook a8, bishop h6, like I told you. Yet another improvement. Now, black will not exchange because, like I told you, you don't want to have a queen here. And you don't want to exchange on g7 either, okay? You are just trying to create pressure, because the pressure at a certain point becomes unbearable and the opponent will make a mistake. Black continue with bishop h8. We can agree with this move. After exchanging his only active piece, you can say that the shooting from the trenches is completely stopped. But as you can see now, white continues his relentless attack. So the evaluation of this position already is better for white. Why? Because he has more active pieces and is going to have a space advantage right away with this. Boom! f4, right? Incredible move. Knight e d7. He needs to remove the knight from there, right? It turns out that the knight on e5 only had a temporary working permit and is currently being deported back to his motherland. Bishop c4, rook a7, and rook e1. Now it is easy to imagine where the main efforts have to be concentrated in order to have a breakthrough on e5. As far as doubling the rooks goes, white had the foresight for it long ago. As we can see, however, the rook f2 is not protecting the pawn on b2 anymore, right? So that's interesting. So what is white doing now? After rook e1, black played queen b8, so he's trying to fight for e5. The problem is that he has a rook stuck here, so he needs to bring it on that side. Rook fe2, so he didn't want to double up on the f file, he wanted to double up here. That's kind of interesting too, right? And bishop c8. And here there is a diagram, because again now they are fighting to stop this e5, and I think black is too late. So pause the video, see what you would do, but I think you already understood it. The move is e5. This position is just the outcome of white's systematic way of improving his position, as opposed to black's infirm of purpose game. Now on to the finale, like the Americans say, finale, invece di finale. D takes e5, and there is d6. This is a great move, d6. Why? Because you cut the queen, you take away two squares, right? but most of all you create a new square for you, and then you start also this attack on a king that is kind of trapped, right? Black plays e4, knight g takes e4, knight takes e4, knight takes e4, and rook e6. Boom! This is a very, very amazing move. I think here it should have been right to put a diagram. It would have helped us a lot, because there is an interesting variation here that says that there is the end for black. And I would like you to, after this move instead, to analyze it and see how white wins. So here, pause the video and try to analyze how white wins, okay? So after bishop d4, the author gives us the following continuation, which is very interesting. Queen takes d4, boom! C takes d4, knight f6, check, right? Knight takes f6, rook takes e8, and then it's game over. You say, why is game over? Because knight takes e8, rook takes e8, checkmate. So imagine, would you have sacrificed your queen for that bishop? That's a tactic that you could find in a game. So I hope that you really pause the video and try to find the right move for white. Okay, I hope I put the position back in the right place. In this position you can start to feel it now that you have seen that there is this mating attack on e8. I think you understand better why black played this. But now, once more, you need to ask yourself what will white play. And obviously, often you don't take right away because you want to give checkmate. That's the goal of the game. So you need to ask yourself, what will you play in this position? I find this game interesting no matter what. The author is teaching us something clearly. White played bishop knight g5, black continued with bishop d4, and once more here there is a diagram, so I urge you, pause the video and find the right move. Honestly, I think it's this easy at this moment because you already understood the theme. The theme is a checkmate on here. You already know what's gonna happen, right? Queen takes d4, boom. Chess is quite a rewarding game. In return for the intricate and successful strategy, the game will reward the winner with an aesthetically pleasing finale for American pronunciation, but the finale is the Italian correct pronunciation. For example, it can reward one with the possibility to sacrifice a queen. We would like to stress that this possibility does not arise out of nothing. It comes up as a result of acquiring enough advantages or a decisive improvement of a position. And I honestly don't remember if it was Fischer who said that tactical shots arise from a superior position, and this is proven by this game, right? C takes d4, rook takes e6, and now you see the power of the two bishops. You will be astounding, right? F takes e6, and boom, rook takes e6, checkmate, cannot be avoided, because these are two terrible bishops. Yep. Yeah. Okay, it says the next game is very much similar to the previous one. To find different games which exhibit similar pattern and idea is a key on which the authors built this book. The importance of the development of such patterns was already discussed in the introduction. So yes, we will watch also the next game in the next video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed it for another reason. You see, this was played in the Atlanta Open in 1996, so it's a tournament that we all can play, right? It's not limited to some players, and so that's the great thing of the open tournaments. Everybody can play in. That's why I don't like divisions between men and women, or any kind of gender division, because I like the idea that you can play chess and not being categorized in some way. You can just enjoy chess no matter what is your race, religion, beliefs, gender. Everybody can just sit down at the board and play. Now, it would be nicer if we had better prizes and, of course, less high entrance fees or less high memberships to federation, because that, in my opinion, is what prevents people from playing tournament games. So I wish you a good day, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Sorry if it was long, but as you can see, in chess we need to think, we need to make comments, we need to understand, and that's what it is all about.